All right, good morning, everybody. I'm joined by Cedric Grant, the Executive Director of the Sewerage and Water Board, Council Member Nadine Ramsey. Council Member Susan Guidry was just with us a moment ago, but had to go to another meeting, but wanted her presence known. Council Member at Large Jason Williams. Members of the Sewerage and Water Board are with us today, as well as other guests. As you're well aware, we have had a number of boil water advisories over the years. This is unacceptable. It continues to be a burden on the families, business, residents, and visitors. So let me be clear. Fixing our Sewerage and Water Board infrastructure so that we have safe and reliable water and drainage is something that we have been working on since I took office, because the system, as you know, was literally beat to death by Katrina and requires massive overhaul. We have to remember where we have been. We have a sewage, water, and drainage system that is over 100 years old. For decades, it was improperly maintained. It was not adequately funded. Then, as I said, Katrina really dealt us a knockout blow. In particular, we have had issues with the Sewerage and Water Board power plant, but those issues only happened after Katrina. Additionally, as you have heard me say many, many times before, but it's worth reminding the public, we're bleeding over 40% of our treated drinking water because we have holes in the pipes, which are providing an additional strain on the overall system. That's why we have worked with FEMA and our partners to get every dollar owed for us in reimbursement to fix our infrastructure, and why we had to go to the residents to ask them for pay rate increase to fix these issues. I also went to Washington, D.C. and successfully negotiated a couple of $100 million investment in the renovations that are going on in the power plant as we speak. The Sewerage and Water Board is currently implementing a $3.3 billion capital improvement program that comprises over 600 projects across New Orleans, including an overhaul of the main power plant on the East Bank. All of the long-term fixes that we are talking about and that we're doing right now include over $150 million in hazard mitigation funds that are being used to upgrade the Sewerage and Water Board Carrollton Power Plant's power generation to make it more resilient and less susceptible to electric service fluctuations. The projects include replacement of critical feeders, refurbishment of the boiler room and turbines, construction of a generator test load bank, and improvements at the Oak Street intakes. All pump stations are now equipped with multiple sources of power. We are working to ensure that the self-generated powered Sewerage and Water Board has relied on for over 100 years can continue to be our primary source of power. All of these fixes that are in place right now, and as you can say by the numbers, are massive, will be done between now and 2019. In 2016, the Sewerage and Water Board will begin construction of an additional $50 million water hammer hazard mitigation project. This includes 2 elevated water towers that will be constructed with a combined capacity of 4 million gallons of water. In the event of complete loss of electrical power, water towers will surge water down into the system to prevent loss of pressure in the system. Construction is going to begin upon completion of the sealer project that's now currently underway along South Claiborne Avenue in front of the Sewerage and Water Board power plant and will be completed by 2018. This is the long-term fix. All told, we're making nearly $300 million in upgrades to the power plant. Now, while these long-term fixes are good and funded, we can't wait until 2019 to do everything we can to try to prevent more water-boiled advisories than are necessary. We need the ability to withstand fluctuations in power. So since last week's event, I've instructed the executive director, I've asked the chairman of the Sewerage and Water Board, I've asked the board and Entergy to focus on this issue and to bring in outside experts so that they can meet together around the clock to determine what steps can be put in place in the short term to prevent this from happening again. So we're expediting any and all long-term repairs that can be done on an emergency basis. We are now working with third-party, independent, local, and national power experts on implementing a short-term plan with which Cedric Grant is going to walk through with you in more detail in a minute. Between our short-term and long-term plan, we're going to minimize the risk for additional boil water advisories. As I've said, the team, in partnership with the City Council, the Sewerage and Water Board, Entergy, outside experts, are working together to make sure that we fix the problem. We've come a long way with getting funding for the crumbling infrastructure. We're doing everything we can to fix it, and we're going to make sure that we find short-term and long-term solutions as well. So with that, let me bring up Cedric Grant to give you some more of the details, to be followed by some of the City Council members that are with us today. Cedric Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the Mayor just noted, we have short-term and long-term plans to minimize the risk of future boil water advisories. We have this $200 million in hazardous mitigation repairs to the power plant on Claiborne that the Mayor outlined to you, and the water tower replacement. But we need something immediate as well. Since last week's event, teams from the Sewage and Water Board, Entergy, and outside experts have been meeting together around the clock to determine which steps can be put in place in the short term to prevent this from happening again. We're expediting any and all long-term repairs that can be done on an emergency basis. Since last week, we have completed the repairs on two 25-cycle pumps that allow Sewage and Water Board to be less dependent on 60-cycle power while we procure ride-through capabilities as we bring up additional capital projects. We're shifting more of that power load to that 25-cycle self-generated power, as the Mayor said, has served us well for 100 years. We're working with the third-party independent local and national power experts to work on coming up with fixes to the system for these ride-throughs. The local firm of Nelson Engineering is working right now designing a short-term fix that ties our pumps together with valves and piping to shared water pressure, so we can ride through with continual water pressure like water towers on a temporary basis while we build the other project. We estimate this fix to be about $3 million and allow us to ride through any standard fluctuations in commercial power. And we expect that we can complete this within the next 6 to 9 months. Again, we apologize for many of the inconveniences these boil water advisories have caused, and you can be assured that we're working day and night to fix it.
Thank you.
We live in a beautiful old city, but there is nothing charming or old world about having boil water advisories every couple of months. The City Council has asked Director Grant to be as nimble, resourceful, and creative as he can be in coming up with solutions to mitigate and minimize these service interruptions. And he has answered that call. And we're glad that he has, and I think the people of the city will be glad when they don't have to wake up to a morning where they can't brush their teeth, or when a restaurant's got to figure out a way to service their customer. They've also stepped up communication. And that communication is going to continue to be stepped up in a way that you haven't seen before in the city of New Orleans. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Grant.
Yes. Good morning. This is a significant announcement today. We look forward to the long-term plans that Mr. Grant is working on with the administration. Certainly, the short-term solutions are important. We have access that gets out to information very quickly. The Public Works Committee is working with Mr. Grant to ensure that we get better communications to all of our constituents. It's a significant impact upon our businesses and upon our residents. We're trying to ease that. On October 6th, the Public Works Committee will ask Director Grant to come before the committee and make a further announcement regarding some of these long-term solutions and short-terms that we can give out to our constituents. What is important is that with social media, information gets out right away, and we want to have official notification from Sewage and Water Board. And Mr. Grant and his office has been very helpful in getting that information to us, and we look forward to continue to work with him. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Grant.